Hello, my name is Georgina Hurge and I'm located in Orlando, Florida. This presentation is for the Interpersonal Communication Project for Class HSC 508 and for Liberty University. Next slide. The presentation will cover my overarching goal of my project. While exploring this goal, I will discuss my behavioral blend in terms of what is expected of me and who I really am. I will also look into varying features of communication and how those will impact my personal behavioral blend. I will then go into looking at the barriers and solutions while pursuing my overarching goal, as well as the internal and external pollution that can also hinder this goal. Next slide. My overarching goal is for this presentation is to better understand the intricacies of my behavioral blend and knowing how to use it to develop healthy boundaries of vulnerability in regards to relating people well. Next slide. According to initial communication skills assessment, I'm an insightful person. This means that I am able to interpret the words and actions of others because I am sensitive to their feelings. I can sense when others are uncomfortable or confused in order to fix situations in order to clarify what is being said. I also have the ability to view others' perspective because I believe empathy is important in order to relate to people well. Next slide. My behavioral blend indicates that people expect me to be a steady influencer. Carbonell also describes this as being submissive and inspirational. This means that at the core of who I am, people expect me to be a people pleaser and more people oriented over task oriented. Due to this fact, I'm expected to focus more on people rather than on important details. I am typically utilized to improve team morale and to be optimistic. On an individual level, I'm expected to be loyal and encouraging. It is expected that I do not do well in tension-filled environments and will therefore do anything to avoid it. Next slide. The other side of my behavioral blend gives insight into who I actually am. At the core, I am a competent influencing specialist. Although I am sensitive to what others think, I prefer to be around people who I'm deemed to be of quality. I take kindly to sincere approval as well as logical explanations. The high C within my blend also enables me to enjoy fixing and solving complicated tasks with planning and preparation. The passion I have for inspiring and supporting others leads me to want to provide clear answers to problems. My people-oriented side also makes my leadership style to lead with enthusiasm and to also lead with the fact that I enjoy understanding all the details of a project before going into it, so I'd want to explain that to others, and that is how I lead. I'm a compliant rule follower that thrives in relational environments with structure. Although naturally very optimistic, I struggle with moodiness and pessimism. People skills allows me to cleverly skirt around conflicts until a boiling point is reached. Above all, people in relationships and being able to relate to them outwardly and inwardly will always be a priority. As much as I care about systems and organization, I'll always care more about how people are infected. Next slide. Highlighted on the slide are the 6 features of communication. Each feature is important to the art of communication and play a valuable role when engaging with others. It takes 2 people in order to make meaning within communication. Stewart tells us that communication is a process of collaboratively making meanings. And we live in a world where meanings are constantly being formed day in and day out. When communicating, both parties are attempting to get their idea across and understood. Culture can be a barrier in communicating as well. According to Stewart, culture influences the ability to make meanings. Culture is a deep part of identity in the way people view themselves. Nexting is an important conversation element, which basically means responding intentionally to what has just been stated to further the conversation. These communication features are important in achieving my overarching goal because it becomes a tangible example of communication. The features explain how meaning is made within the dialogue and how perceptions play a role in that. When communicating with others and trying to relate, it is important for me to take into consideration how they'll perceive what I'm saying in order to make sure that I'm communicating effectively. Next slide. Receiving information and interpreting meaning is important when communicating. As mentioned within the previous slide, there are factors that can both aid and hinder in the inhalation information. It is impossible to perceive every cue given, which is why perception is selective. We choose as a listener what we listen to and how we perceive it. Stewart states that the inferences or judgments made, the inferences or judgments made depend on cues selected and how they are organized in relation to our own assumptions, expectations, and goals. The process of inhaling is called cognitive schemata, is another way of taking in and organizing new information. Within this form of inhaling lies stereotypes and other generalizations based on past theories that we may have experienced or have heard of. Learning to inhale helps in my overarching goal because when I pay attention to the cues given to me by others, it makes me give my full attention to that person and take in everything they are saying. Burley Allen offers perspective about listening as well that is important to the inhaling process and my overarching goal. Those that listen earn the respect and loyalty of people, which also helps when trying to aid in the problem solving process. Next slide. Exhaling, just like breathing after inhaling information, is a way to express thoughts and perceptions from what has been inhaled and received. The openness expands relationships via an element called self-disclosure. It's important to remember that self-disclosure is in the moment and how those experiences of the past have shaped us and adjusted our perspective. At times when inhaling, people may attempt to use impression management, which is when someone controls and manipulates the way that they are being viewed from everybody else. It's understanding exhaling is a major part of my overarching goal. My behavioral blend is so people-driven and at times process-driven that I do not always consider the importance or value of others getting to know who I am. I love learning about other people and gaining new insight, and when I do not return the favor, I'm robbing someone of the opportunity to see the world differently and to experience something new. Next slide. There are obstacles that prevent me from reaching my overarching goal. These interpersonal barriers can cause serious hurdles to the listening process, which in turn makes it challenging for me to relate well to others because I've set up an unsafe environment from the beginning. Peterson describes the ultimate barrier as a flat brain syndrome, which is when emotions block our feelings and ability to relate to others on a heart level, and the emotions are our stomach, and the feelings are our hearts. Once those are blocked, the head is thrown out of whack and we cannot process social cues logically or even begin to understand where someone else is coming from. Another barrier is faking attention and ritually listening to others. Once again, this barrier makes self-disclosure an unsafe place because instead of giving that person my full attention to process, I'm thinking about other things like homework and work and just other tasks that need to get done. The need to be everything to everyone is another interpersonal barrier. Instead of listening and allowing people to work through their own problems, as described in Peterson's text, I will offer my advice and my own opinion. With this barrier, it just means that I'm not fully listening because I'm continually trying to think of ways to solve problems for other people instead of giving them the opportunity to work through it themselves. Next slide. Solutions for these interpersonal barriers can be found. Listening to myself and becoming self-aware of how I respond to the world around me is valuable. By understanding my personal value and belief system and attitude, I'm able to communicate ideas effectively to others. Paying attention to nonverbal cues is another solution for interpersonal barriers. Burley Allen highlights the importance of paying attention to nonverbal cues, such as contradictory tones and body language to what is being said. Also, as a listener, it's important to monitor my own personal nonverbal cues. Peterson mentioned that a goal as a listener is to create a safe environment in order for the talker to talk and for self-disclosure to happen. Encouraging feedback and paraphrasing conversation is a solution that aids with active listening. I have a habit of ritually listening, and it appears that I'm engaged when I'm not because I'm once again checking off all these tasks that are important to do. In order to ask questions to further the conversation, I have to hear what is being said in order to maintain listening credibility. The C side of my behavioral brain provides challenges for me when I have to listen to others' opinions on how to carry out a specific task. Although I value people very much, I can become stubborn when trying to listen to a task being executed that's not exactly the way that I have planned or the way that I see fit. A solution for that is just to be open-minded and to allow what Peterson calls space in order to listen to the other ideas that are being brought to the table. Next slide. Aside from interpersonal barriers, there are additional internal issues to impact my overarching goal. Post-work, I tend to focus on homework and running, and after being tired for so long, I become fatigued, which means that I'm not able to fully pay attention to what others are saying. A solution to this is to give people a hearty 10 to 15 minutes of my attention instead of trying to give them an hour that's only half-hearted. The people-oriented side runs deep with the passion that I have for others. At times, this is an issue reaching my overarching goal because I am tempted to say that I understand where they're coming from and to express that empathy instead of just listening. Peterson states that by agreeing, I'm not really listening and saying I understand, and I could, at that point, make people feel uncomfortable depending on the situation and therefore lose listener credibility. Disregarding others when I feel threatened is another internal issue of my to my overarching goal. By shutting down and not listening well, I'm not creating a safe environment for others to talk, therefore not creating deep relationships. Next slide. There are internal issues to impact my overarching goal as well. When meeting with a person in a noisy area that's challenging to hear and engage, um, I tend to always not listen as fully because I can't hear them, in which I become frustrated. Um, as even though I desire to listen to them, it makes it difficult because I cannot hear them. Another external barrier is clock watching and operating under pressure and deadlines. With some activities, I tend to lead a scheduled life, and I'm consistently thinking of the next place I need to be. Excessive fidgeting is another external issue that I have in regards to achieving my overarching goal. When someone is consistently moving, it is distracting because in my mind, I'm thinking, are they comfortable? Are they okay? And I'm constantly trying to figure out what's going on beneath all the fidgeting. This leads me to go into what Burley Allen calls fake listening because I'm not paying attention to the person. I'm thinking of all the other factors that can be going on with them. Next slide. In conclusion, my overarching goal is to better understand the intricacies of my behavioral blend and knowing how to use them, use those aspects to develop better self-disclosure in regards to relating to others. Within my uniquely you assessment, people expect me to only be a steady influencer and fully people oriented. But who I actually am is extremely people oriented, but also very organized and into processes. The various barriers experienced when trying to achieve my overarching goal may seem challenging, but there are solutions in order to craft deeper relationships with substance. By applying the information I have learned in this course, it will help me on the path to forming deeper relationships and more meaningful relationships. Next slide. Thank you for your time. And this slide shows my bibliography.